the agreement template. We'll be glad to get any feedback from you, or if you have questions, suggestions, or recommendations with respect to this particular resource materials, we will be grateful. Please send us an email at crescentslegal at gmail.com. Our goal is to simplify your business process and succeed. Please note that this template provided is general in nature, and we take no responsibility for or guarantee any or give any guarantee of any business profit, client performance, or earnings. The attainment of the objectives of this very template depend on your client management, and specific professional guidance. So if you need professional guidance, please send us an email or contact us on Instagram via DM, and we'll be glad to help. Now, please note that you cannot reproduce this document for sale. You also are not permitted to charge a legal fee simply because you have this tenancy agreement. By charging a legal fee on this tenancy agreement, you will be infringing on the copyright of Victoria Echobu of Crescent's Legal Associates. Victoria Echobu is the principal and founder of Crescent's Legal Associates, and she holds the registered copyright of this template. So if you have any need for specifics, please feel free to reach out to us. All right, so let's get into details of this and how you can use it. This video is going to be short about how you can use this template. Now, here you fill in the date of the tenancy agreement. Don't worry about um, whether it becomes applicable then. You'll see that in a later clause. Now, the this will be the name of the landlord, or if it's a property manager, the name of the property manager, his address, preferably a traceable address within with street name, street number, um, state, local government, and all that. The same thing applies here for the tenant. The tenant's name and address will be inserted here in these blank spaces. Now, this blank space is for the description of the property. Is it a two-bedroom? Is it a duplex? Is it a one-bedroom? Fill in blank spaces. Now, this is it an office space? Exactly what space is it? Is there a measurement to it? You can fill in that description here. You also state the address here, all right? And then we go on to the next one. Now, in this clause here, we are talking about the period of the tenancy, and how much the rent is. So you enter this detail. It says all that premises to the tenant to hold same for a term of, is it a 1 year term, is it a 2 year term? You fill in that this blank space. So you write the words here, and then you write the number here. Then the date of the commencement. So remember that up here you wrote the date that this agreement is made, the date that it is signed. But here you're going to include the commencement date, the date that it begins, the day, the month, and the year. And then here you're going to write the day it ends, and that is to be a day before the same date on the following year, or at the end of the period that this tenancy is for. Mind you, if this tenancy is for more than 1 year, then you should consider a lease agreement. We explain that in other resource that we have, and if you want specific information, you can reach out to us in our DM or check out our page for more information. Now, you put that, then here you're going to include the rent fee. So you can either put the word here and the figure here, or you leave it the way it is. And the same thing applies here. So the landlord hereby acknowledges the receipt. Nonetheless, and despite including this in the tenancy agreement, we still have tenants who request for specific receipts. So in this bundle, you already have a receipt. Now, here we are referring to, depending on the state where you are located, please include the acronym for the electricity distribution company. So I'm based in Abuja, and so ordinarily I would use here AEDC. But where you live in a place like say Lagos, you can put EKDC, or you stay in a place like Ibadan, you say IBEDC. Anambra, wherever it is, you just put in the acronym that is used in your state. Let's move on. Now you come on here and in this clause F, these are all called clauses. In clause 2.f, we are talking about the use of the property. Is it for commercial use? Is it a residential place? Is it for church only? Is it a school? So you put that here. All right, and then let's go on. Now, this clause pertains to notice to your tenant for repairs or inspection. So here you are going to state says to permit the landlord and his agents with or without workmen at all reasonable times, provided at not less than dash hours prior notice. So the prior notice can be 24 hours, can be 48 hours, it can be 72 hours, or however long. And if they are not calculated in hours, you can specify if you want to say 3 days notice, prior notice. So this is you saying that the tenant, because tenants covenants, the tenant covenants to give access to the landlord and his agents with or without workmen to enter into the property after giving a certain number of um, prior notice. I'm sure that's clear. Then let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the next. It'll be good that you go through the entire tenancy agreement. We advise that you do so that you get a clear picture of what you are. And then you also pass the same copy or the completed tenancy agreement to your tenant. Now let's go on to this clause here. It's very important. I've included some things that you can edit here. So now clause 5A says if the tenant fails to make any payment of rent, you specify the number of days. So here I added 14 days. You can put your own number of days. There's no specific um, requirement in law because I have people coming back to me to say, please, what does the law say? The law of landlord tenant relationship, depending on the state where you live in, the law of landlord tenant relationship prescribes that when that with respect to landlord tenant relationship, what applies is what the parties agree. What applies to that relationship is what the parties agree. But where parties don't sign an agreement, as they don't sign something like this, then the provisions of the law will apply. And in many cases, the law is not specific on some of these things. Now, so let's go on. It says if the tenant fails to make any payment of rent, dash days after it has become due and payable, the tenant shall pay to the landlord an administrative late fee of how many percent? Do you want this to apply? So we always advise our landlords to include a late fee policy in their tenancy agreement to forestall or prevent their tenants from owing them rent. When you put a late fee, we've applied that in a number of properties that we've managed and it was successful. So a late fee um, policy, then you have here um, the number. So here you put in the words and here you put in the number. And the same thing will be placed here. So let me delete that. It can be 5%, it can be 10%, but please make sure that you don't impose this. It is agreed by your tenant before they come into your property. They are to agree on this before your tenant, or your tenant is to agree with this term before they enter your property, or be allowed to negotiate this term before they enter, so that it's not after they've entered now give them a tenancy agreement stating a late payment policy. It's that will be you'll have a lot of problem enforcing that policy, and you don't want that. So let's go on. The term hereby created shall terminate by efflution of time. Efflution of time simply means at the end of the term prescribed on. So the date that you're going to put here is the same date that you put here. Let me go back there. The same date that you placed here. This date. So, and expiring on the dash day of that. You just copy this date, right? So let me just do that for illustration purposes, you copy this date and then you bring it all the way down here. Because one key thing is emphasis in tenancy agreements on the dash day or dash. All right, so provided that the tenant reserves the liberty to renew. So if you want, if I see, especially professional estate managers, I see them make this mistake all the time. They say that a property is leased or let at 1 year certain. Yet, without including a clause like this about renewing the tenancy, the tenant goes on to renew. But if it is for 1 year certain and renewable, then there's no need placing 1 year certain at this point here. There's no need, there's absolutely no need for that, stating that here. You can just let them know that it's renewable. But if it's just for 1 year, you specify that, and then this clause, this entire proviso, this is called a proviso. This proviso is not needed. You just put a full stop here, and that's all. All right. So point C: if the tenant shall at any time fail, neglect, or to perform or observe the terms of this agreement, and such agreement continues for more than dash days. So this is a breach of contract clause. What happens if your tenant does not keep to the covenants? For instance, he sublets your place, he's living in the property, but other people are also living with him that are not tenants and they did not pay rent to you. Or he's not supposed to have loud parties, or do carry conduct him or herself in a certain way, or has furniture placed in a common area and continues to do so for a long period of time. Or um or what other covenants? Let's look at other covenants. Or does not allow the landlord to access the property, is always not around, and this continues for more than it's this specified days, and the landlord gives him notice, the landlord shall have given him written notice. It must be in writing. So once you are dealing with tenants, word of mouth is not enough. You put it in writing, either by yourself or through your property manager or through your lawyer. Or if you prefer that we do that for you, you can contact us, like I said earlier, and we'll be happy to help you with that. We put that into writing. It is a charged service, it is not part of the templates that you get. All right, so the landlord shall be free for that purpose to take legal steps to peaceably repossess the property following the dash law on. So, what state do you live? Is it Oyo State? Is it River State? Is it Nasarawa State? Is it Jigawa State? Wherever it is that you live, you just put the name of the state here. So let me put that there. All right, so let's move on. Now, whereupon the expiration of the term, the term hereby created, the tenant is unwilling to renew the tenancy, the tenant shall notify the landlord by giving prior notice of how many months. So, if after you have said this term of tenancy is renewable, maybe for 2 years, for a number of years, and your tenant decides that it doesn't want to continue staying in the house. You know how some people at the end of the term just stand up and pack out? No. Whereas you had previously agreed that they would renew the term, but they just stand up and move out. And that moving out keeps your property vacant before you check maintenance or get somebody else. You have lost a lot of time and income. So to avoid that, we have included this clause. So your tenant should give you a certain period of notice. It can be 3 months prior, it can be 6 months prior, depending on what works for you. It can be 2 weeks if that works for you, but it's advisable that you calculate it in months. It can be 3 months, can be 4 months prior. So that you can plan for it, you can take steps, you can visit the property, you can carry out inspections and the rest. If the rent hereby reserved shall be unpaid for dash number of days. So your rent is due, it is unpaid, and after becoming payable with the late fee accruing and same also unpaid, whether or not having been formally demanded, or if any covenant on the part of the tenant herein contained is breached or not observed, and the breach is not remedied after dash days, the landlord shall at any time thereafter commence an action for recovery of possession before a court of law. Now, this clause in itself is like a deterrent, is warning your tenant that if the rent is not paid for so number of days, can be 14 days, can be 21 days, the choice is yours, and or you breached some terms of this contract and we have notified you, whether we have notified you to make a change or not, you continue to breach it, we can go to court over this matter to recover possession. By including this clause, you are deterring that tenant from resorting to court. So that I know that when you see this, you go to court for immediate termination of it, you start saying, "Oh God, what's this? Let me change this word to expiration. Expiration of time." Right? Expiration of time simply means expiration of time. Is a legal word. All right. So let's move on. We'll find it later. All right, so that's majorly all that you're going to have to fill in the blanks, and then you insert your name here, signed by the within name landlord. You insert your name here, you just copy and write your name, and the same thing. Then you sign here, you sign above this name, and then you write your name again here. Then when you print, your witness is going to fill in these spaces. Your witness will fill in these spaces. And the same thing for the tenant's name will be written here. You can type the name, you just delete this or highlight it and write over it. The same thing with this. And that is your tenancy agreement. I'm sure that this has helped. Once again, if you have any question, please feel free to reach out to us via email or contact us via social media, Instagram, by sending us a DM, and we'll be happy to help. This is the cover page. Tenancy agreement between, you write your name here as the landlord or the property manager. You can put, if you're a property manager, you write property manager, or if you have a document that appoints you as a landlord on behalf of the owner of the property, you can insert the landlord, and you write your name, the name of your tenant, and then the tenant's name. Now, this part has to do with describing the property. The same thing that you wrote up here. Let me get to that place here. The same thing you wrote here. You just copy this entire thing here. So the property described as, and come all the way down here to insert it. So in respect of, you copy this here and place it there. You change it to capital letters, and that's all. Then here, who prepared this document? This document was prepared by, you write your name, you write your address, you write your phone number and email. But if you need us to place a seal, a lawyer seal on this document, or customize this document for you, then you know what to do. Send us an email or reach out to us, and we'll be happy to help. But it's advisable that you remove this watermark. You just write your name here and send it to, fill in that detail and send the documents to your tenant. But usually I advise, if you want a lawyer to draft your documents, to customize it, there's some things that are included here. Maybe you want to fine tune them a bit and you have issues with it. Once again, reach out to us, send us an email, send us a DM via social media, especially Instagram. Send us a DM, a direct message via Instagram, and we'll be happy to help. Cheers.